In her past life, on her way back to Oakhaven, Elena was ambushed. When she regained consciousness, she found herself lying in a cornfield, her shirt unbuttoned and messy. Beside her lay the town outcast, a man despised by everyone, completely unconscious. Fearing she would bring disgrace to the family name, her parents gagged her and tied her up in a makeshift bridal chamber that very same day. Meanwhile, her younger sister Chloe stole her identity and took her college acceptance letter to head off to New York. 3 years later, Chloe's scheme to seduce a wealthy heir failed miserably, costing her both her enrollment status and her reputation. In the end, she leaped to her death from the roof of a university lecture hall. Elena, on the other hand, endured those dark days until her husband's old case was finally reopened. The police proved he had been framed. The real culprit was his father's illegitimate son from an affair. With his name cleared, he was welcomed back into his wealthy family and took Elena far away from Oakhaven. When Elena opened her eyes to this second chance at life, she realized Chloe had already beaten her to the cornfield.
Hey guys, what happens when you steal someone else's destiny? In today's story, a girl steals her sister's future wealthy husband just to skip the struggle. But do shortcuts really pay off? Let's dive in.
By the time Elena led the townsfolk there, Chloe was clinging to that very same man. Her clothes were disheveled, but she didn't look afraid in the slightest. Seeing Elena standing at the front of the crowd, Chloe smirked at her triumphantly. "This time, it's my turn to live the good life," she gloated. "I'm leaving that miserable drudgery in New York to you." Elena reached out to pull her sister up, intending to tell her to put her clothes back on properly. However, the man struggled to open his eyes, forcefully pushed Elena away, and shielded Chloe behind him. "Don't even think about touching her," he growled. Elena swallowed back whatever lingering affection and loyalty she still held for him from their past life. That very night, she gathered her ID and essential documents. Before the sun even came up, she was already on a northbound train. When Chloe had emerged from the cornfield, bits of grass still clung to her hair, but she had a death grip on Julian's arm. "I'm marrying him today," she declared. "If anyone tries to stop me, I'll kill myself right in front of you." Their parents stared at Chloe, then at Julian, their faces draining of color and shifting through a spectrum of shock and rage. Julian had a notorious reputation all over Oakhaven. 2 years prior, a girl had accused him of dragging her into a barn. Although no hard evidence was ever found, the nasty rumors and whispers never ceased. In the past, Chloe would cross the street just to avoid walking past him, yet now she was treating him like an absolute prize. Elena knew exactly why. In their previous life, right before her death, Chloe had broken into Elena's home and lunged at her with a knife. The security guards had pinned Chloe down, pressing her face hard into the carpet, but she had still managed to turn her head and smile at Elena. "Did you really think no one saw anything that night?" Elena had clutched her phone, silently dialing the police without responding. "I saw everything," Chloe spat. "When that guy dragged you off the side of the road and into the cornfield, I was hiding behind a tree. I could have gone for help, but I waited until the next morning to lead the whole town out to find you. Once everyone saw you in that state, Mom and Dad finally agreed to give me your college acceptance letter." Elena had asked her, "You made it to New York. Why did you even bother coming back to find me?" Chloe's sinister smile had completely shattered. "I thought once I got into a prestigious college, everyone would respect me. But they kept asking if I played any instruments or where I had traveled for vacation. I couldn't answer a single question. I went after Cole Crawford, that rich heir, and he didn't even bother to remember my name. I drugged his drink because I wanted to trap him into claiming me. Why was I the one who ended up expelled?" She had struggled so violently against the guards that her wrists bled, her voice growing increasingly hysterical. "A woman who never even went to college, who married a piece of trash. Why do you get to live in a massive mansion? What gives you the right? If I ever got another chance, I would never go to New York to suffer in your place." Just as the police walked through the door, Chloe had suddenly wrenched herself free from the guards and thrown herself out the second-story window. Now, it was clear she had been reborn too. Chloe had deliberately tracked down Julian while he was still under the effects of a drug, taking the initiative to trap him into marriage. She actually thought that by stealing the title of his wife, she could perfectly copy the rest of Elena's prosperous life. Leaning against the dirt wall, Julian was still reeling from the lingering effects of the drug. Hearing Chloe boldly declare she wanted to marry him, the tips of his ears flushed a deep red. "I'll take full responsibility," he murmured. Julian looked at Chloe, his voice hoarse but undeniably sincere. "Since you've chosen to be with me, I won't ever let you suffer." He had said those exact words to Elena in their previous life. Elena's chest tightened, Before she could even look away, her mother landed a harsh slap across her face. "Is this how you take care of your younger sister?" she shrieked. "She gets bullied like this, and you still have the nerve to just stand there?" Her father shoved Elena forward. "Outsiders only know that a daughter from our family got into trouble. But they don't know which one," he barked. "Let her go back to her room. You take her place and go through with this wedding." Chloe immediately lunged forward, shielding Julian. "No, he is mine," she protested. She then leaned in and whispered something into their parents' ears. Their anger noticeably subsided, and when they looked at Julian again, a calculating glint had appeared in their eyes. Her mother lowered her voice and asked, "Are you telling the truth? Can he really reunite with his wealthy father later on?" Chloe nodded vigorously. Her father cleared his throat loudly. "Fine. Let's proceed with the wedding for now. If she doesn't actually have that kind of luck, you can leave then and have your sister take your place." They discussed Elena's life as casually as if they were deciding which hen in the yard to sell. Elena didn't bother arguing. She simply went back to her room to retrieve her college acceptance letter. Fearing that any delay might ruin her plans, Chloe insisted on holding the wedding banquet that very day. She even ordered Elena to chop vegetables and boil water for the reception. When the villagers heard that Chloe had willingly chosen to marry Julian, they all gathered outside the courtyard gate to watch the spectacle. Not a single person stepped inside to attend the banquet. "She acts so high and mighty usually, but it turns out she's just as quick to sneak into a cornfield with a man," they mocked. "Julian hasn't even been acknowledged by his real father, yet she actually dares to marry him." Chloe lifted the hem of her skirt and ran out, shouting at the crowd, "Just wait until my husband strikes it rich. Even if you get down on your knees and beg me, I won't give you a single drop of water." The mocking laughter from the yard only grew louder. Unable to bear scolding Chloe, her mother turned and pinched Elena's arm fiercely. "Are you dead? Can't you say a word to defend your sister?" Feeling utterly humiliated, her father forcefully overturned the freshly set table. Vegetable broth and shattered porcelain splashed all over Elena. Pointing at the ground, he ordered her to clean it up. Otherwise, he would throw her out along with the mess. Julian, wearing a crumpled red flower pinned to his chest, walked through the door just in time to see Elena crouching on the floor, picking up the broken shard. When she looked up, for a fleeting moment, she forgot that this was her second life. In their previous life, when her parents had berated her for being shameless, it was Julian who had stood in front of her to protect her. During their poorest days, he was the one who had saved the last bowl of noodles for her. Those 5 years of companionship hadn't been entirely fake. Julian. Elena barely had time to speak before he strode right up to her. "Stay away from Chloe from now on," he warned, his voice cold and rigid. "She told me you tricked her into the cornfield, and then purposely called people over to catch her. She is kind-hearted enough to let it go, but I can't just pretend nothing happened." Elena stared at him in disbelief. "I led the villagers there because I was worried something had happened to her." "Stop pretending," Julian snapped. He grabbed Elena's wrist tightly and dragged her away from Chloe's bedroom door. "She's been ruined by you to this extent, and you still want to paint yourself as the victim? I'll remember what you owe her today. If you ever fall into my hands in the future, I'll make you pay it all back for her." From inside the room came Chloe's soft giggles. "Julian, stop talking to her and come in here." Julian immediately let go of Elena and turned around to coax Chloe. Through the thin walls, Elena could hear his tone soften, sounding exactly like how he used to comfort her in their past life. Elena stuffed her college acceptance letter into a cloth pouch strapped close to her body. Taking only 2 sets of clothes, she made her way out of the courtyard through the back door. Chloe blocked her path at the kitchen door, purposely asking if she was reluctant to leave. "You lived with him for a whole lifetime," Chloe mocked. "You obviously know exactly how rich he's going to become. You're pretending to be so calm right now, but inside, you must be crying your eyes out, right?" Elena finished packing her bag. "If you think this is your great fortune, then hold on to it tightly. Don't ever expect me to suffer in your place again." The smug smile on Chloe's face froze. In their previous life, their first home after leaving the village, it was a small room partitioned off from an abandoned warehouse. In the winter, the freezing wind would howl through the gaps in the corrugated metal sheets, and the water pipes would freeze solid. Every day, Elena had had to walk 3 miles just to wait in line at the public well. When Julian was blocked at the recruitment center and publicly humiliated as a rapist, he would come home and not even dare to turn on the lights. She had accompanied him to find witnesses, copy documents, and sift through discarded old newspapers just to locate a factory's address. That year, they had eaten moldy buns, and because they couldn't afford the medical bills, they had huddled together in a hospital corridor until dawn. Those grueling days wouldn't just vanish simply because her sister had claimed the bridal bed first. Chloe only remembered the Julian who would later wear sharp suits in a grand mansion, completely ignorant of the fact that the path leading up to those suits was one Elena and Julian had paved together for over 15 years. Chloe snorted coldly. "Don't try to scare me. If you could endure the hardship, so can I. Besides, I know how to coax a man much better than you do. With me, Julian is only going to strike it rich much sooner." From inside the room, Julian called out to her. Chloe immediately switched to a sickeningly sweet tone and hurried inside. Elena watched her sisters retreating back, and the last lingering traces of resentment in her heart finally dissipated. What Chloe had stolen was never a ready-made, perfect husband. It was a grueling life that required two people to shoulder the immense burdens together. Chloe only wanted the glamorous end results. Sooner or later, the crushing reality of the process would force her true colors to show. Reaching the edge of the village, Elena didn't look back even once. Since she had let her sister make her choice, she should finally choose for herself. On the day she arrived in New York to register for college, she headed straight to the Student Affairs office to apply for a work-study position. Seeing her meager luggage, the professor in charge of registration took pity on her and gave her a temporary job welcoming the incoming freshmen so she could earn some extra money for meals over the next few days. The campus sun was blindingly bright. After carrying the final stack of documents, Elena's vision suddenly blurred. Her legs gave out, and she stumbled directly into a male student who was just stepping down the stairs. Someone nearby immediately let out a loud whistle. "Crawford! That's the third one today, isn't it?" Elena quickly steadied herself and took a step back. When she looked up and saw his face clearly, her palms turned ice cold. It was Cole Crawford. In her previous life, after Chloe dropped out of college, their parents had forced Elena to investigate the whole truth. The documents sent by the lawyer had laid it out in black and white. From the very moment she enrolled, Chloe had set her sights on Cole Crawford. Later, she attempted to drug his drink, but was caught red-handed. The Crawford family pursued the matter relentlessly, thoroughly destroying any way out for Chloe. Tragically, Cole Crawford never lived to see graduation either. The drug had caused severe, lasting damage to his body. When he eventually flew abroad for specialized medical treatment, his plane was involved in an aviation accident. It crashed into the ocean, and there were no survivors. Elena gripped the box of documents tightly, murmured a soft apology, and quickly walked around him. Behind her, someone chuckled. "She didn't even give you a second look. Now that's playing hard to get. Want to chase after her and tease her a bit?" Cole Crawford only shot back 2 words, "You're sick." When the orientation events wrapped up, Elena went to the equipment room to return a megaphone, only to bump into several of Cole's friends. One of the guys handed her the registration log, grinning playfully. "Hey freshman, what's your major?" Before Elena could even reply, Cole Crawford reached over from behind and snatched the logbook away. She wrote it on the very first page. "Are you blind?" The other guy dragged out a long ooh, teasing. "You certainly observed that closely, didn't you?" Cole slammed the stack of documents onto the table, turned on his heel, and walked away. At the time, Elena only found them annoying. She had no idea that before she had bumped into him, Cole had watched her carry 4 heavy loads of boxes all by herself under the scorching sun. Years later, he would confess to her that he had originally wanted to call someone over to help her, but he was afraid she would think he was throwing his weight around and acting entitled, so he had just stood there feeling frustrated. At the opening ceremony, Cole stood at the podium as the freshman representative. Elena shrank to the very back of the crowd, not daring to look at him for too long. She figured that as long as she kept her distance and didn't repeat the horrific mistakes her sister had made, he wouldn't be dragged into that fatal disaster again. In the days that followed, Elena split her time strictly between studying and making money. However, Cole Crawford always seemed to appear wherever she had to pass by. When she walked past the basketball court, a basketball would magically roll right to her feet. His friends in the distance would wink and gesture, while he stood there with his arms crossed, watching her as if waiting for her to pass the ball back. To avoid him, she switched to taking the back exit of the lecture hall. The back exit required a 20-minute detour and meant walking down an unlit path. One evening, after a late class, she hugged her books and walked to that path, only to discover that 2 new streetlights had just been installed at the entrance. The next day, a classmate mentioned that the student council had just submitted a maintenance request to the university, and it was Cole Crawford who had personally signed it. She didn't dare assume it had anything to do with her, she just chalked it up to a coincidence. While she was bussing tables at a restaurant, his group of friends occupied the table she was assigned to serve. "Guys, you've been looking at the menu for a while. What would you like to order?" she asked. The guy sitting on the outside edge closed the menu and said, "First, tell us what time you get off work, and then we'll order." Another one chimed in with a laugh. "What's your major? Cole asked for your name, so why did you run away?" She gathered the menus. "If you aren't going to eat, please give up the table for the next customers." Sitting in the middle, Cole's expression grew increasingly dark. "Can you guys just shut up? Didn't you ask us to help?" one of them replied. "I told you to order food," Cole snapped. Eventually, they relented and ordered the 2 cheapest vegetable stir-fries, but they intentionally made her keep refilling their water and changing their plates until the customers at the other tables started complaining. The manager pulled her aside. "Did you offend them somehow? If this keeps up, other customers won't want to sit in that section." That night, Elena quit the job. Not long after, Cole blocked her path on the small road behind the library. "Did you quit your job?" he asked. She stepped to the side, but he took a corresponding step to block her again. "Elena, what exactly are you running from?" Hearing him say her name made her even more tense. "Cole, I've never done anything to offend you," she said softly. "Could you please tell your friends to stop using me for their own amusement?" His face immediately fell. "Who is using you for amusement? The basketball court, the restaurant, and now here." He looked as if he was choking on his words. It took him a few seconds before he let out a cold laugh. "You're overthinking things. I have no interest in you, and I don't have the free time to go out of my way to bully you." With that, he turned and walked away, his footsteps as fast as if he were fleeing. Sure enough, from the very next day, she didn't see him again. A while later, the university announced a batch of anonymous scholarships. Elena's name was on the list. It covered her entire tuition and dorm fees and provided a monthly stipend that was just enough for her meals. The counselor assured her that the sponsor only evaluated applicants based on academic merit and family background, asking for nothing in return from the students. Still, she kept that gratitude deep in her heart. At the end of the semester, the sponsoring company organized a short-term volunteer trip for students to a mountainous region. Elena signed up, wanting to lend a helping hand to those who would come after her. On the day they gathered, she spotted Cole in the crowd. He only gave her a passing glance before turning and boarding a different bus. For several consecutive days, they each led different groups of children to school, and neither of them initiated a conversation with the other. A massive rainstorm struck on the 5th night. The water in the mountain stream rose above the stone bridge overnight. Outside, someone banged on a gong, calling for evacuation. They protected the children as they rushed up to higher ground. Just as Elena handed the last child over to a teacher, she heard someone downstream screaming Cole's name. When she turned around, she saw him lifting a little girl who had fallen into the rushing water, pushing her toward the teachers on the bank. Then, the next surge of water crashed in. The rocks beneath his feet gave way, and his whole body was swept away by the violent current. There were no ropes nearby, and no one else had time to jump into the water. Elena grabbed a long clothes-drying pole, jumped down into the shallows, and chased after him along the rushing current. Cole surfaced once. She reached out with the pole, but his slippery hand missed it. She lunged forward and grabbed him by the collar, her legs going numb from slamming against the submerged rocks. Finally, the people on the riverbank threw a rope down to them. Elena hooked the rope under his arms and, together with the people on the bank, hauled him up. Once she confirmed he was still breathing, her vision finally went black. When she woke up, she was lying in the county hospital. A neatly dressed, middle-aged woman stood by her bed. Seeing Elena open her eyes, the woman pressed the call button for the nurse before taking her hand. "I am Cole's mother," she said. "You saved my son's life. The Crawford family owes you a debt of gratitude, whether it's money, a job, or any other arrangement as long as it's not illegal. Just name it." Elena shook her head. "The scholarship that allowed me to attend college already saved me once. That day, even if it had been any other classmate, I still would have jumped into the water." The polite, formal mask on Mrs. Crawford's face softened, her gaze becoming much more genuine. That scholarship was never a transactional exchange. After Cole woke up, he kept asking about you. I told him to come find you himself. Before Elena could even think of a way to politely decline, Cole pushed the door open and strode in. He walked briskly, a gauze bandage still taped to his forehead. Stopping by the bed, he first looked at her legs, then at her IV drip, before finally speaking. "Who gave you permission to jump in?" The question left her momentarily stunned. He pulled up a chair and sat down, his voice dropping very low. Aren't you afraid of me? You were avoiding me so much that you even quit your job over it. So why would you throw your life away in a flash flood? I couldn't just stand there and watch you get swept away, Elena replied. Because of the scholarship? And also because you had just saved that little girl. He pressed his lips into a tight line, seemingly dissatisfied with her answer. Money is not something my family lacks. Tell me what you really want. Say it again. Elena thought for a moment. Then I want you and your friends to stop crowding me from now on. I just want to study in peace. Cole's face flushed red before darkening. When have I ever crowded you? He was about to argue further, but remembering the basketball court and the restaurant, he swallowed the rest of his sentence. Fine. Suit yourself. He stood up and stormed out, slamming the hospital room door heavily behind him. Mrs. Crawford didn't leave right away. She gently pulled up the corner of the blanket that had slipped off the bed and asked about Elena's family situation. Elena simply told her that she came from a small town, that her parents favored her younger sister, and that she intended to rely on her scholarship to finish her degree. Hearing this, Mrs. Crawford didn't offer pitying words, nor did she make grand promises to fix everything for her. She merely placed her business card on the bedside table. If you ever run into trouble that the university can't handle, you can come to me. Saving Cole was your choice. Our family remembering this favor is our choice. The two things don't need to cancel each other out. For the first time, those words made Elena feel that accepting someone else's kindness didn't mean selling herself short. That afternoon, Elena got out of bed to practice walking and spotted her sister downstairs. Chloe was visibly pregnant and wearing a caregiver's uniform. She was sponge bathing an elderly patient, but when the patient's family criticized her for being too rough, Chloe threw the wet towel into the basin. I'm pregnant, and you're still making me do this kind of degrading work? Do you have no conscience? She snapped. The family who had hired her grew furious. You were the one who said you could handle any job when you started. If you can't do it, take your pay and leave. Chloe spun around and locked eyes with Elena. Her gaze immediately dropped to Elena's hospital gown, and her eyes lit up with a terrifying, malicious gleam. Elena, I knew you'd end up just as miserable. She practically marched over, lowering her voice to a vicious whisper. Did they push you down the stairs, or did they throw you into the water? Without waiting for Elena to respond, Chloe took another step closer. Those rich frat boys at college only use poor girls for their own amusement. Today they might treat you to dinner, but tomorrow they'll plaster nasty rumors about you all over campus. I warned you. People like Cole Crawford are way out of your league. You shouldn't have messed with him. Elena just looked at her and asked, Are you living a good life now? Chloe instantly cradled her pregnant belly. Julian cooks for me every single day. He doesn't even let me touch the foot bath water. Just wait until his biological father comes to acknowledge him. I'll be the wife of the heir to his wealthy family. And what about you? You're lying in the hospital, and you don't even have anyone to bring you a meal, do you? Elena didn't explain. Chloe took her silence as an admission, rubbing her pregnant belly and laughing. Julian treats me so well. He's about to clear his name from that old case, and his real father will come to take us away. Just you wait. In the future, I'll be living in a massive mansion, while you'll only be able to pack your bags and trudge back to campus. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Julian came up carrying a plastic bag. Seeing Chloe with red, teary eyes, he immediately pulled her into his arms. Who bullied you? Chloe leaned into his embrace. It's nothing. The work is just a little tiring, but I'm willing to endure the hardship with you. Then don't do it anymore. Let's go home. But we still don't know how we'll pay the rent. I'll figure something else out, he assured her. In their past life, Elena had waited a very long time for him to figure something out. After leaving the village, Julian was constantly thwarted by his half-brother at every turn, and his father refused to acknowledge him. He spent his days drunk, while Elena, heavily pregnant, had to carry heavy boxes at a warehouse. It wasn't until she miscarried that he finally agreed to go out and find a job. Chloe still didn't realize that what she had stolen wasn't just the future mansion, but also those agonizing years of the most abysmal poverty. Chloe suddenly pointed at Elena. Julian, my sister is in the hospital too. She looks so pitiful all by herself. Why don't we stay with her for a bit? Julian looked at Elena as if she were something filthy. Her getting hurt is just karma. Don't ever be soft-hearted toward the person who harmed you. Chloe sweetly hugged his arm. Let's go home then. You can cook some noodles for me. Elena, you used to eat the meals he cooked, didn't you? Well, you won't ever have that privilege again. They had only taken a few steps when Cole Crawford walked over from the other end of the corridor. He glanced at their retreating backs. Acquaintances of yours? No, Elena replied. He shoved a 3-tiered lunchbox into her hands. The family chef made an extra portion. It would be a waste to throw it away. Chloe got a clear look at his face, and the color instantly drained from hers. She stared at the lunchbox, then back at Elena, and gritted her teeth. Some people, she sneered, are just getting toyed with by a rich heir for a few days, yet they actually think they can marry into his family. Julian asked, "What's wrong with you?" Chloe didn't answer, just hurriedly pulled him downstairs. In the following days, Cole brought Elena meals every single day. The first day, the rice was undercooked. The second day, the soup was bitterly salty. The third day, the vegetables were unwashed and gritty with sand. Elena finally couldn't help but ask, "Did your family get a new chef?" His ears turned bright red. "Why do patients talk so much? Just eat it if it's edible." After she was discharged and returned to campus, Elena thought they could finally go their separate ways. Instead, he happened to choose the exact same elective classes as her, and even joined the same student club. She got a new part-time job, and he would show up every few days to buy basic things he absolutely didn't need. One day, she stopped him behind the cash register. "Cole, what exactly are you trying to do?" His face darkened as he asked, "Do you seriously still think I'm taking revenge on you? Aren't you?" He was so infuriated by her words that he paced back and forth twice before finally stopping in front of the counter. "I am pursuing you," he blurted out. "The food was cooked by me. The classes were chosen on purpose. The club was me following you, Elena. How much clearer do you want me to be?" He slammed a crumpled piece of paper onto the counter. On it were several opening lines to ask someone out for a meal, each line crossed out. They said, "When you pursue someone, you have to create chance encounters." They told me to create chance encounters, so I did, but all you did was run away. Then they told me to give you gifts. Every time you ate the food I cooked, you looked like you were swallowing bitter medicine. Elena couldn't help but say, "It was honestly really hard to eat." Cole glared at her, but the tips of his ears turned bright red. "I learned how to cook properly after that," he muttered. "Cole," Elena said gently, "I'm not criticizing you for not knowing how to pursue someone. Then what are you so afraid of?" She couldn't say that she had foreseen his death. She could only stare at the price tag on the counter. "There are some people who, if you get too close to them, it might cost you your life." He fell silent, clearly assuming that she was talking about her own traumatic past experiences. "I would never use you for amusement," he said quietly. "I know. If you know, then why are you still hiding from me?" Elena couldn't answer. The documents and news reports of the plane crash from her past life suddenly flooded her mind. Without another word, she turned and fled into the storage room. Cole didn't chase after her. True to his word, from the next day onward, he really didn't appear again. Over the next half year, Elena often took detours past the basketball court and unconsciously searched for his familiar silhouette in the cafeteria. By the time she finally admitted to herself that she was actively listening for news about him, a classmate mentioned that he had already completed the paperwork to go abroad. He was leaving on the 10th of the following month. They said he was going for medical treatment and an exchange program. Hearing that date made her whole body run ice cold. The flight that had crashed in her previous life was exactly the one on the night of the 10th. She immediately called Cole. He answered quickly, though his tone was aloof. "What is it? Don't go." The other end of the line was silent for a few seconds. "What gives you the right to tell me not to go?" She couldn't speak of a plane crash that hadn't happened yet, much less explain her rebirth. Cole gave a soft chuckle. "Have dinner with me on the night of the 9th. Give me a reason to stay, right to my face. If you can convince me, I'll change my ticket. If you can't, I'm leaving that very night." Elena agreed without hesitation. On the evening of the 9th, she arrived at the hotel address he had texted her. The waiter informed her that the private room was ready. The moment she pushed the door open, someone forcefully pinned her against the wall. 3 unfamiliar men stood in the room. Julian, wearing a brand new suit, sat on the sofa. Chloe was leaning against his chest. Her eyes were red and swollen, and her once pregnant belly was now completely flat. Julian stood up from the sofa. "I told you, if you ever fell into my hands, I would make you pay for everything you did to Chloe." Chloe clutched her stomach and sobbed. "If she hadn't come to the hospital to provoke me, how could I have fallen? How could I have lost the baby?" Elena struggled and screamed, "I didn't do anything. The hospital has security cameras." Julian refused to listen. "You caused her to lose my child. Now I'm going to make you taste the exact same suffering she endured." He jerked his chin toward the 3 men. Someone grabbed Elena's jacket. Chloe snatched Elena's phone just as a call from Cole came through. She answered it, putting on a sickeningly sweet tone. Mr. Crawford, my sister already has a man. Stop pestering her. Elena couldn't hear what the other end said. Chloe snapped several photos in quick succession of Elena being restrained by the men. I've sent you the pictures. See? She's very busy right now. Cole's voice could be heard through the phone, urgently demanding their location. Chloe immediately hung up and deleted the call history. Taking advantage of her captor's momentary distraction, Elena kicked the coffee table over. Glasses shattered onto the floor, the loud crash alerting the waiters out in the hallway. Julian frowned. Cover her mouth, he ordered. Elena managed to wrench one arm free. She grabbed the tablecloth and yanked it down, sending plates of food and wine bottles crashing onto the floor. Finally, someone started pounding on the door from the outside. Chloe's expression changed. Let's go, hurry! Don't let anyone see us. She urged Julian to leave, but not before using Elena's phone to send one last text message to Cole. Don't ever look for me again. After ending the call, Chloe laughed until tears rolled down her cheeks. He actually believed it. He's leaving tonight, she sneered. Elena, you've just lost your best way out again. Julian wrapped his arm around her and guided her out. Don't look at her anymore. It'll just dirty your eyes. The moment the door clicked shut, one of the men shoved Elena down. Her forehead slammed hard against the carpet, and her ears filled with their vile, mocking laughter. The very next moment, the door to the private room was violently kicked open. The men froze. Cole Crawford's friends rushed in, quickly pulling Elena to safety before tackling the three thugs to the ground. One of the guys took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders, while another immediately dialed the police. Elena grabbed the person closest to her. Where is Cole? The guys exchanged hesitant glances. He saw the photos. He thought you really didn't want to see him, so he headed to the airport early. The hotel manager arrived running with the security guards, and the police were already on their way. Cole's friends decided one of them would stay behind with Elena to give a statement, while the rest offered to rush her to the airport. Elena shook her head. The evidence can't be lost. She demanded that the manager secure the room's booking records, the keycard access logs, and the hallway security footage. Pointing at her phone lying on the floor, she asked the guys staying behind to make sure no one touched it until the police arrived. The three thugs were still thrashing and cursing, but when one of them heard Elena mention checking bank transfer records, his face went deathly pale. Cole's friend jotted down his contact information for the manager. I'll cover all the damages up front, but don't you dare let a single frame of that security footage go missing. These decisive actions took only a few minutes, but they perfectly preserved the most crucial evidence Elena would need for her counterattack later. Which flight is it? She asked. The flight number they gave her matched the exact one from her past life. Ignoring the scrapes on her legs, Elena urged them to leave for the airport immediately. The car sped down the highway toward the airport. The guys continuously dialed Cole's number, but the line just kept ringing with no answer. The guy in the passenger seat turned around. Elena, there's something you probably never knew. When Cole was little, his nanny used to lock him in a dark room. He doesn't intentionally act aloof or give people attitude. He genuinely just doesn't know how to talk to the person he likes. The guy sitting next to her in the back seat lowered his head in guilt. Blocking your path with the basketball, refusing to order at the restaurant, that was all our doing. We taught him that. We told him, if he did those things, you'd notice him. We didn't think it would make you quit your job. And the meals at the hospital? Elena asked. He cooked them himself. He still had a fever those days, but he'd call us over in the middle of the night to taste test. It was so salty I had to chug 3 whole bottles of water. The guy in the passenger seat chimed back in. That scholarship? He funded it out of his own allowance. He was afraid that if he only sponsored you, you'd figure it out and refuse to accept the money, so he begged his family to expand the list of recipients. Another guy put his phone down, his voice tense. Still no answer. Before he headed to the airport, he texted me. He said if you didn't show up tonight, we should never mention his name in front of you again. Elena asked them, when exactly did he decide to leave early? Right after he got those photos. His first reaction wasn't to be angry at you. He was just terrified of putting you in a difficult position. He said that since you'd rather go see someone else than show up to his dinner, staying around would only make you hate him more. Elena closed her eyes. Cole had always used the harshest, coldest exterior to protect the most tender, vulnerable heart. He had claimed his pursuit was just a coincidence. He had claimed the meals he painstakingly cooked were just the chef's leftovers. He had claimed staying by her side in the hospital was just on his way. Yet, Elena realized, she hadn't been any more honest than him. She had clearly seen his kindness, Yet she had used a disaster that hadn't even happened yet, a tragedy from a past life, to make decisions for this one. The car shot out of a tunnel, and the signs for the airport finally appeared ahead. Elena urged the driver to go as fast as possible, but to please stay safe. "We're going there to keep him from leaving, not to put more people in danger," Elena said. The guy driving nodded, and the car's speed leveled out. Elena typed out a text message over and over again, only to delete it each time. Finally, she just sent one sentence. "Cole, wait for me. I have something I need to tell you in person." The message received no reply. She stared at the headlights shining on the road ahead, unable to hold back her tears. Just as they rushed into the airport's departure hall, the public address system echoed through the building. The announcement stated that the flight, shortly after takeoff, had encountered a severe technical failure and made an emergency landing in the nearby ocean. Casualties were temporarily undetermined. Elena's legs gave out, and she collapsed to her knees on the floor. Suddenly, someone ran against the flow of the crowd rushing from the security checkpoint. Crushing his boarding pass in his hand, Cole sprinted over and pulled her into a tight, desperate embrace. Elena touched his shoulders, his face, and then gripped his collar tightly, confirming that he really hadn't boarded that plane. Only then did she break down, sobbing loudly. "Why didn't you answer your phone?" she cried. "Did you know that plane was going to crash?" He held her even tighter. "I left my phone in the car. I made it through security. But then I turned back." "Why?" "Because I couldn't accept it," he murmured, resting his forehead against hers. "I want to ask you one more time. You didn't rush all the way here just to repay a scholarship, did you?" Elena looked at the raw anticipation in his eyes and finally nodded. Cole let out a long breath and pressed her back into his chest. His friends standing nearby quickly recounted what had happened at the hotel. Cole's arms tightened around her. "Hand the evidence over to the police," he said coldly. "Julian and Chloe, neither of them is getting away with this." After returning to campus, Elena cooperated with the police to give her statement. The hotel security footage, the call recordings, and the bank transfer records were all secured. It was also officially proven that Chloe's miscarriage had absolutely nothing to do with her. However, Julian still refused to stop. Numerous posts appeared online, using the photos of Elena being pinned to the ground to spread malicious rumors, claiming she was working as an escort to make money. Several students were even paid to spread gossip around campus that she was romantically involved with sketchy outsiders. Cole wanted to use his family's connections to crush the public backlash, but Elena stopped him. "Let them post it. If we delete it too early, the evidence will disappear." She saved the original posts, the account handles, and the shared links. She submitted a request to the university to pull her attendance records and simultaneously asked the hotel to retain all their security footage. Meanwhile, Cole's friends tracked down the 3 men from that night. Seeing that the police had already opened a case, the thugs quickly confessed exactly who had paid them off. Elena organized the evidence and handed it over to her lawyer and the university administration. The lawyer advised her to write down every single event in chronological order. She started from the hotel reservation text, listed the keycard access logs for the private room, the exact time the money was transferred, the moment Chloe answered the phone, all the way up to the timestamp of the very first defamatory post. Sitting beside her, Cole saw those photos and tried to shut her laptop several times. "Stop looking at them. Let the lawyer handle it." "I have to look," she insisted. She zoomed in on the frames that had been intentionally cropped, pointing out the reflections of 2 other people in the wall mirror. "They claim I took these photos willingly, but in the mirror, you can clearly see someone pinning my arms down. And this one," she continued. "The digital clock on the table perfectly matches the timestamp from the hallway camera." Cole stopped trying to intervene and simply documented every single discovery for the lawyer. When the university investigated, one student adamantly claimed he had seen her hanging out with men off campus with his own eyes. Elena demanded that he state the exact date and location, then produced her attendance sheet for a full-day practical class on that very day. He couldn't answer. Very quickly, he admitted that someone had given him $200 and told him to go into the group chats and repeat a pre-written script. The rumors seemed widespread, but when peeled back layer by layer, they were nothing more than a chain of lies with a traceable source. Right at this time, Julian blocked her path outside the university. He only called out one word, "wife," and she instantly knew that he, too, had remembered their past life. Those eyes no longer held the confusion of the young man in the cornfield, but rather carried the natural familiarity of 5 years of shared life. "Why didn't you choose me this time?" he asked. He glanced at the Crawford family car that had come to pick her up, his tone sounding like he was scolding a sulking wife. Back then, I didn't have my memories of our past life, so of course I protected Chloe. You knew exactly what was going to happen later. Why couldn't you have just held on to me a little longer? Elena asked him, Did you come find me to apologize for what happened at the hotel? That was all a misunderstanding, he said. Chloe told me you were the reason she lost the baby, and I just lost my mind in anger. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. Give me 1 more year. I can use my experience from our past life to defeat that illegitimate son. Chloe has been with me and even lost a child, so let her keep the title of wife. Come back to me. You are the one I truly love. Elena listened for a long time before she could finally confirm he wasn't joking. You want her as your wife, and you want me on the side as your mistress? I won't let you suffer, he urged. We had such a good life in our past life together. How can you bear to throw all that away? Elena raised her hand and slapped him hard across the face. You treat 2 women like objects to be divided up, and you dare use those 5 years to guilt-trip me? He held his cheek, his eyes turning dark and gloomy. Elena stared right at him, enunciating every single word. I don't want those 5 years anymore either. Julian let out a cold laugh. You'll regret this. He then turned and walked away. Sure enough, another wave of rumors surfaced online. 3 days later, her lawyer released the complete set of evidence. The hotel security camera timestamps, the original photo files, the financial transactions between the accounts hiring the thugs and the accounts posting the rumors. Not a single detail was missing. The university also announced the results of its investigation, and the students who had taken money to spread the rumors faced severe disciplinary action. The situation flipped completely overnight. The next day when Elena went to class, the people who had gossiped behind her back avoided eye contact. Some even ran up to apologize, claiming they had only shared the posts to follow the trend and didn't know whether they were true or false. Elena didn't demand that everyone like her. She only demanded that they delete the shared content and post a public correction in an equally prominent place. During a class meeting, her academic advisor stated that a person's innocence shouldn't be based on whether or not she looks like a victim. Looking at the evidence is the minimum responsibility of every individual before sharing something, the advisor said. This time, Elena was neither gagged nor tied up by her family and married off to someone designated by public opinion. She sat in her classroom, watching with her own eyes as the evidence reclaimed her good name. Those who had deleted their posts lined up to apologize, while Julian was officially summoned by the police. Subsequently, the Crawford family terminated 2 massive projects that were under negotiation with Julian's family. The banks also reassessed the financial risks associated with his family's business. Because of this, Julian's family empire was nowhere near as stable as it had been in their past life. Julian's father, who already had suspicions regarding Julian's old case, found out that his son had offended the Crawford family over a petty personal vendetta. In the middle of a meeting room, his father smashed his cup right in front of everyone. Who exactly did you offend? He roared. Julian tried to explain. Cole Crawford is just sticking his neck out for a female student. I can handle it. That is the only son of the Crawford family, his father bellowed. You hired people to do something illegal just because of a woman's whining, and now you're dragging the entire company down with you? Dad, just give me another half a year, Julian pleaded. I know exactly which projects are guaranteed to make money. His father pointed furiously toward the door. Worry about settling your criminal case first. As of today, you are not allowed to set foot in this company. Without Elena from their past life enduring those hardest years alongside him, and without fully inheriting his family's vast resources, Julian's so-called 1 year to turn the tables became nothing more than empty talk. Chloe was the first to panic. She completely lost it, smashing Julian's last remaining computer in their rented room. Screaming at him, she demanded, Didn't you say you were going to become the richest man? Did I marry you just to live in this dump? Chloe screamed. Julian was equally furious. If you hadn't stolen Elena's place, how would I have ended up in this mess? She rejected you herself. What does that have to do with me? Chloe shot back. You knew exactly what was going to happen in the future, he accused. Chloe's expression shifted before she bluntly admitted it. Fine, I remember our past life too. It's just because you're completely useless. If I had known Cole Crawford would protect her like that, I would have just kept clinging to him from the very beginning. The two of them finally saw each other's true colors clearly. Chloe quickly contacted Julian's half-brother. She swept away all of Julian's remaining money, thinking she could use it to buy her way into his wealthy family. However, the moment the half-brother got the money, he cut off all contact. She couldn't even chase him down at the bus station in time. When Julian discovered that his savings book and cash had vanished, He immediately went looking for Chloe, only to hear from the neighbors that she had dragged her suitcase into someone else's car. He called her dozens of times, but ultimately only received one sentence in return. "You're useless now. Don't drag me down with you." This was the very thing neither of them had ever understood. They remembered who was rich and who was poor in their past life, but they failed to remember that those outcomes never just appeared out of nowhere. One viewed their partner merely as a ladder to wealth and glory, while the other took his wife's sacrifices entirely for granted. Even given another lifetime, all they knew how to do was trample on each other. Having lost his final capital, Julian was ruined. Chloe couldn't return to their village either. Later, someone mentioned seeing her working in a small, rundown factory in the south, but no one bothered to verify if it was true. After graduation, both Elena and Cole received acceptance letters for graduate programs abroad. Before they left, Julian came to find Elena once again. He had grown incredibly thin, and the cuffs of his old suit jacket were worn and shiny from use. "I've seen Chloe's true colors clearly now," he said. "She only stayed with me because she remembered that I was going to be rich in the future." Elena replied, "The very first time you regained your memories and came to find me, you already knew exactly what kind of person she was." "I was just furious back then," he hastily explained. "When I said I'd let her be my wife and have you stay by my side, I only said those things out of anger. I was jealous that you didn't choose me, so I said it on purpose just to spite you." "And what about the hotel?" she asked. Julian's voice softened, and after a long pause, he said, "She told me you were the reason she lost the baby. I was tricked by her." "So just because you were tricked once, that gave you the right to call 3 thugs to ruin me?" "Elena, I was wrong." His voice was hoarse. "We lived together for 5 years. You can't just deny everything between us just because I made one mistake. I can start over. Come with me. The days ahead won't be any worse than our previous life. You call sending those men to the hotel just one mistake?" He opened his mouth to speak, but then lowered his voice, shifting his tone. "Cole Crawford, the threshold of the Crawford family is too high. He's just playing around with you because you're a novelty. When you actually want to get married, they will never agree." Cole stepped up from behind Elena, placing himself firmly between her and Julian. "Whether she steps through the Crawford family's doors is entirely up to her to decide. You should worry about keeping yourself standing first," Cole retorted. Julian's face turned cold. "What kind of skill is relying on your family's wealth?" Cole stared him down. "A man who can't even protect his own wife is the real piece of trash. Trading her suffering for your family fortune and then crawling back to spout affectionate nonsense? It's pathetic." Julian's face flushed bright red. Cole didn't yield an inch. "If you ever harass her again, I will send the court rulings from the hotel incident and the defamation case to every single one of your business partners. Good luck getting a single order after that." Julian stood there for a very long time before finally hanging his head and walking away. Even after he was far gone, Cole's jaw was still clenched tight. "Don't listen to his nonsense about matching social statuses," Cole said. "If my mother ever dares to bully you, I will always stand by your side." Elena smiled. "I know you will stand by me, but my future must be held firmly in my own hands." After going abroad, Elena focused entirely on researching high polymer materials. Whenever her experiments failed, she would still get grumpy and frustrated. There were restless, sleepless nights, and she no longer forced herself to be the one who was always right. Cole sometimes complained that she spent more time in the lab than with him. But after complaining, he would still bring 2 portions of late-night snack zone for her, and 1 for her lab partner on the night shift. Once, at dawn, the equipment reported an error yet again. She slammed her file folder onto the table and slumped onto the floor, refusing to move. He didn't urge her to persevere, nor did he offer empty platitudes. He simply picked up the scattered documents and arranged them in order. "Go home and sleep tonight," he told her. "Tomorrow, if you want to go through this data again, I'll go through it with you." The next day, she ran the comparisons again and discovered the problem lay in a batch of damp raw materials. 3 weeks' worth of results had to be completely scrapped. She was so frustrated that she broke down and cried in the hallway. After crying, she went to request a new batch of materials. Cole didn't use his connections to help her, nor did he use his money to pressure the lab into giving her the green light. He merely brought her breakfast while she waited in line to sign for the materials, and pushed his own meetings to the evening just so he could help her seal the discarded samples one by one. This restraint gave her far more peace of mind than hearing him say, "I'll handle it for you." The work remained hers, and his companionship never morphed into control. Leaning against a cabinet door and watching him, she suddenly realized that being loved didn't mean having a path laid out for her. It meant that no matter which path she chose, he was willing to take it seriously. By the time she finished her combined master's and doctoral program, Elena and her team had secured their first authorized patent. On the day they discussed the technology transfer, she completed the defense entirely on her own, without a single word of help from the Crawford family. When the review panel relentlessly questioned her into the fourth round, she laid out all her records of failure, explaining exactly how the new approach circumvented the old problems. As the meeting concluded, the person in charge confirmed on the spot that they were approved to enter the intermediate testing phase. Stepping out the door, she finally realized her back was drenched in sweat. After they returned to their home country, Cole's parents threw a welcome home party for them. Halfway through the meal, Mrs. Crawford smiled and revealed a secret Cole had kept for years. "He funded that scholarship himself," she said. "He was afraid you'd feel awkward accepting his money directly, so he kept pestering me to add an extra batch of scholarships and pretend it was a standard corporate initiative." Cole's ears flushed bright red. "Mom, just eat your food," he mumbled. Mrs. Crawford continued. "Later on, when he saw you were on the list for the volunteer teaching trip, he hurriedly squeezed his own name in. Just because someone has a stubborn mouth doesn't mean they haven't done good deeds." Elena grabbed Cole's hand under the table. He tightly squeezed hers back, his palm just as warm as it had been that day at the airport. After leaving the Crawford residence, Cole parked the car by the river. He walked around to the passenger side and suddenly dropped to one knee. The wind seemed to blow away all the words he had prepared. He forgot every single one of them and could only hold the ring up in front of her. "Elena," he said, his Adam's apple bobbing, "I won't ever ask you to stop working, and I won't ever decide where we live for you. Are you willing to share a few of your difficult nights with me from now on?" She reached out her hand. "I am." As Cole slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembled violently. He stood up and pulled her into a hug, his eyes actually red with emotion. Later on, Julian attempted to start several businesses, but they all failed. Crushed by massive debt, he was reduced to driving a motorcycle taxi just to make ends meet. Elena never went to verify this. She didn't need to rely on his downfall to prove that she was living a good life. After her project was implemented in the real world, there were still new experiments and new failures. Cole wasn't always waiting at the door for her. He had his own work to do as well. They would sometimes argue, but neither of them ever shied away from the debate. They would keep at it until both of them fully understood each other's perspective before finally letting it go. When the last light in the laboratory flicked off, Elena packed up her data for the day and headed downstairs. Cole's car was parked by the curb. Seeing her walk out, he rolled down the window and asked, "Ready to head home?" She opened the car door and slid into the seat. "Let's go home."
Stolen success never lasts. She wanted the reward without the hard work and lost it all. Meanwhile, Elena proved that true happiness and respect are built with your own two hands.